Amazing revelation. Billionaire exposed as father of unexpected baby on flight with ex-wife. Jack Thompson's heart raced as the plane began its descent into New York City. A sweeping skyline stretched beneath him, each glimmering skyscraper a reminder of the dreams he once shared with Laura, his ex-wife. She sat beside him in first class, her presence heavy with unspoken words, a well of emotions he had buried beneath layers of ambition. The silence crackled between them like static, igniting memories of late nights spent dreaming about their future, dreams that Laura had sacrificed, her art stifled as Jack climbed the corporate ladder. His mind darted from one thought to another, an endless spiral of what-ifs and regrets. He was a billionaire at 42, a title that felt both hollow and overwhelming. But nothing prepared him for what Laura would say next. "I have a toddler," she blurted out, her voice a quiet storm. Jack felt the ground beneath him shift, as if skyscrapers were collapsing in slow motion. He was no longer in control. He was thrust into a revelation that shattered his calculated world. The child was a product of a one-night affair after their divorce, a fragment of life he never anticipated. Panic surged within him, fingers gripping the armrest harder than necessary. The implications twisted like a knife in his gut. As the plane lurched, so did his emotions. Anger clawed at him for the betrayal. Guilt twisted inside for the life he had crafted alone, far away from the warmth of a family he thought was lost forever. How could he navigate the unfamiliar terrain of responsibility thrust into his lap, wrapped in the ties of innocent demands? Jack had mastered the boardroom, yet the thought of being a father paralyzed him with fear. Before he could form a response, a flight attendant interrupted his spiraling thoughts. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." Jack's insides twisted further. He had spent years cultivating an empire built on numbers, yet no amount of wealth could prepare him for the interconnectedness of love and familial ties. The words danced with his thoughts. Was he prepared to step into a role he had previously rejected? Images of Laura's disappointment, her artistic dreams sacrificed for his ambitions, flashed before him. Waves of shame crashed over him, a tidal force seeking to drown any remnants of that youthful enthusiasm they once shared. He felt the sudden urge to offer her a bountiful financial aid package, an attempt at easing the burden of her struggles. But the moment he considered it, a deeper truth gripped him. Money couldn't fix the heartache or replace his absence. In their shared silence, Jack came to understand that he had lost sight of what it meant to be a partner, to be fundamentally involved in someone's life. As the plane neared the terminal, doubt festered in his chest. What kind of father would he be? One who could provide everything materially, yet fail to enrich a growing soul? The emotional chasm laid bare his inadequacies, and time grew taut. Could he dare re-enter the world of family he had carved away in pursuit of success? Jack felt the looming storm inside him intensifying, a tempest that demanded answers but offered none. They were descending into the chaos he had fine-tuned himself to navigate, rattled but determined. Jack was left grappling with this unresolved conundrum. Has he traded happiness for accolades and wealth? In this moment of revelation, he could only wonder if he could turn this tragedy into a new legacy, or would he allow the past to bind him in solitude? As if on cue, the wheels met the tarmac, the jolt echoing the unease in his heart. The real story was just beginning. The plane taxied to a stop, and Jack took a deep breath, his chest tightening. His pulse quickened, each thump resonating with unresolved conflict, and the weight of Laura's revelation loomed larger than the towering skyscrapers outside. He wanted to leap from the plane and run, to escape this new reality that had inexplicably grounded him. Yet, a quiet determination flickered inside him. It was not merely survival, but perhaps an opportunity for rebirth. As passengers disembarked, Jack lingered, the chaos of their quick exits a sharp contrast to his own internal tumult. What now? He mused silently, reflecting on the boy he had yet to meet. The prospect filled him with a sense of dread he couldn't shake. How does a man who has shunned vulnerability for nearly 2 decades suddenly step into the shoes of a father? Jack, Laura's gentle voice broke through his spiraling thoughts. We need to talk. He nodded, trying to conceal the frayed nerves that had unraveled within him. Stepping into the airport terminal was like entering a battleground, each face a reminder of what he could lose or gain. Jack led the way outside, the noise of the city washing over them in a cacophony of voices and engines. Do you need a ride? He asked, half-heartedly, knowing that any offer would mean a longer conversation, a path he was hesitant to initiate. Laura shook her head, determination sharpening her features. I'll call an Uber, but I think we need to start scheduling visits. For our son, she said, punctuating her words with a sense of urgency. It was her use of our son that struck him like a gut punch. Before he could respond, a fleeting thought crossed his mind. Did she still harbor feelings buried beneath years of uncommunicated doubts? He was losing control, and it felt suffocating. Right, about that, he stammered. Look, Laura, he continued, nervously adjusting his cufflinks, a habit formed in high-stakes meetings. I understand the need for routine, but I can't just step in and what, disappear again? She interrupted, her voice laced with frustration. You can't throw money at this. He needs a father more than a paycheck. Jack's throat tightened, and he struggled to articulate a response. She was right, an uncomfortable truth he had to confront. He was a successful businessman, yet utterly unprepared for the emotional landscape of fatherhood and partnership. As they stood by the curb, Laura glanced at her phone. Jack watched her, thinking of the sacrifices she had made for his ambitions. The rift between them was vast, but perhaps there lay an opportunity to bridge it. Can we talk about what you need? He suggested, feeling a flicker of courage ignite within him. What I need, Laura replied, her eyes piercing into him, is for you to be present, for Luke to understand who you are, not just as a billionaire, but as a man who wants to love him. The sincerity of her words ignited something within Jack. She was asking for connection, not for the first time, but now it could take shape in a meaningful way. Yet the thought of vulnerability tangled with the long shadow of his past, the fear of exposing himself again, of failure. With a trembling breath, Jack nodded slowly. I want to be involved. I have no idea where to start. The admission was akin to shedding layers of armor he had worn for years. Let's figure it out together, she whispered, her determination mixing with a hint of hope. The prospect of collaboration felt alien but vital. The ghosts of former battles began to recede. Just as they were losing themselves in this moment of connection, the honk of an approaching car sliced through the air, causing Jack's thoughts to scatter. He took a step back, contemplating the path ahead, the layers of connection demanding to be unearthed. How deep would he need to dig into his past to find the man capable of rekindling the love for family? As he watched Laura walk towards the waiting vehicle, Jack felt the weight of a decision crystallizing. The journey ahead was intimidating, but it could lead to something transformative. The moment he stuffed his hands deep into his pockets, he realized he stood on the precipice of change. Just then, he noticed a small child across the street, pulling out a parent's hand, their innocent laughter a stark juxtaposition to his turmoil. Memories flooded back, visions of laughter and the warmth of family he had so ardently avoided. The daunting realization dawned. Perhaps opening up was the answer he had been neglecting. Jack straightened, a surge of resolve coursing through him. 6 letters surged in his mind. Father. The time had come to face that reality, one way or the other. The city loomed around him, an unforgiving labyrinth of ambition and isolation. Jack stood frozen outside the terminal, his posture revealing the fight between his former self and the burgeoning reality of being a father. He felt as though he were balancing on a tightrope, stretched between 2 worlds, one filled with wealth and power, the other fragile, yet vibrant with connection and responsibility. As the Uber pulled away, he was left grappling with the echo of Laura's words. They curled around him like a haunting melody, pulling him deeper into reflection. Was he really prepared to embrace this new identity? The thought stirred a cocktail of exhilaration and dread, threatening to spill over. Could he transform from mere spectator to participant? Jack turned away from the terminal, a decision burning hotter than the summer sun. He walked, each step away from the airport, intertwining possibilities with the implications of his actions. His mind buzzed with conflicting thoughts, reliving the reasons why he had stepped back, the fear that had kept him away. while the unresolved threads of anxiety flared as reminder after reminder of his inadequacy surfaced. He reached his car, a sleek symbol of his past endeavors, yet as he grasped the door handle, it felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. No longer could he hide behind success. He would have to confront his vulnerabilities head-on. Sliding into the leather seat, he opened the console and took out a notebook, its pages blank yet brimming with potential. In the midst of his thriving career, he had always made lists, tasks, goals, ambitions, but this one would be different. He wanted to devise a plan, to lay bare the steps to truly being present in Luke's life. His first entry was painfully simple: meet Luke. It felt monumental, yet there it was, an honest starting point. The pen skimmed the paper, flowing with words that revealed an unexpected honesty. Be consistent, listen and learn, show up. Each phrase caught like a net, trapping thoughts he feared would escape otherwise. He paused for a moment, reflecting on the implications of those words as fragmented images of his childhood surfaced. Moments spent with his own father, some filled with encouragement, others riddled with disappointment. Jack's grip tightened around the pen, his resolve hardening. What bits had he taken into adulthood? What lessons had he learned, and how could they shape this new venture? Regret coiled in his chest at how he had let fear dictate his past choices. Pushing the notebook aside, Jack flicked the ignition. The engine roared to life, as did his determination. He drove aimlessly through the bustling streets, the shapes of people and buildings bleeding together. He needed to confront Laura about the specifics of being in Luke's life. What role would he play? What expectations were entailed? And how could they ensure they worked as a team? But it was more than just logistics. As much as he dreaded the confrontation, he felt the urge to confront the emotional battleground that had been laid bare. He had hidden behind his achievements for too long. Today, he needed to step into a realm he had avoided: his feelings. As the skyscrapers faded into the background, he found himself in a quieter neighborhood. Exhaling slowly, he parked and took a moment to gather himself. Jack realized that every deep breath he took was not just a preparation for a conversation, but also a means to embrace the vulnerability and connection he so lacked. However, the grim reality still weighed heavily on him. What if he stumbled, incapable of delivering on expectations? The thought triggered a new wave of anxiety, destabilizing the confidence he had managed to gather. He clenched his jaw, battling the inner turmoil, resisting the urge to default to the familiar pattern of retreat. It was then that he caught sight of a playground, children laughing, their carefree spirits a stark contrast to his conflicted heart. He remembered the weight of longing for connection and the desire to shield himself from pain, but this time he felt a glimmer of hope as well. Stepping out of the car, he took a deep breath, prepared to confront not only Laura, but also the man he needed to become. The distance to the next defining moment was short, yet filled with the gravity of uncertainty. Could he shape a destiny greater than his past? Drawing closer to the entrance of the nearby cafe where he had agreed to meet Laura, everything hinged on the conversation ahead. The moment felt suspended, full of promise and peril alike. Each step felt like a chisel shaping a new identity. Would he emerge transformed, ready to embrace his responsibilities as a father, or would he shrink back into the shadows of his previous self? The door swung open, a jarring chime echoing in the small coffee shop where Laura awaited. But before he could step inside, he hesitated, realizing that this moment could define the rest of his life. What awaited him inside could shape not just their relationship, but also unlock the man he had spent years burying beneath layers of ambition. The stakes were higher than ever. Was he ready? The cafe's interior was cozy, yet the warmth seemed distant to Jack as he stood on the threshold, his heart racing with a cocktail of dread and anticipation. He forced himself to take a step over the threshold, each footfall resonating as if the floor acknowledged the weight of his inner struggle. Laura sat in the back corner, her eyes scanning the menu without focus. The moment their gazes met, the air thickened with unspoken tension. "Hey," she said softly, a hint of vulnerability in her voice that surprised him. He slid into the chair across from her, trying to mask the storm raging within him. "Hi," he replied, his voice uncharacteristically rough. Moments passed as they processed the awkwardness, neither knowing how to bridge the chasm time had carved into their relationship. The conversation started hesitantly, small talk hovering uncertainly over the coffee cups they each ordered. Jack wanted to cut through the trivialities, to dive into the heart of the matter that pulled at his insides like a puppet string. "Laura," he began, the name feeling both familiar and foreign on his lips. "I've been thinking a lot about Luke." Her eyes sharpened. "You're really here to talk about him?" "Yes," he replied, the word feeling both like a lifebuoy and an anchor. "I want to be a fixture in his life, not just a distant figure. I want to understand what's expected of me." "We both know it's not that simple," she interjected, her voice tinged with cautious steel. "You walked away once, Jack. What assurances do I have that this time will be different?" The words struck him like a physical blow, shattering the fragile wall of confidence he had built before entering. A flash of anger ignited, but beneath that smoldering heat lay an undeniable truth. She was right. The echoes of his past decisions loomed larger than just the space between them. "I can't change what happened, but I can change what happens next." His voice lowered as a new wave of resolution washed over him, mingling with the regret that haunted him. "I need to be more than I was. I owe it to both of you." He watched as her expression shifted, the wall she'd constructed beginning to crack. "What would that look like for you? What does being a father mean to you?" The question resonated deeply, teasing threads of possibility and uncertainty in equal measure. He realized, even as he searched for an answer, that forging this identity could only be about intention. It meant facing the shadows of his past choices head-on. "I want to be consistent," he murmured, echoing the words he'd penned earlier. "I want to listen and learn who he is, who you both are, without the weight of my past holding me back." Laura folded her arms, skepticism coloring her expression. "We can talk about intentions, Jack, but will you actually follow through when it gets hard?" Determination flared within him. "I'm scared. I'm terrified. But that fear can't dictate my actions anymore." The weight of honesty settled between them, drawing a tentative line of trust. "I don't want to visit from the sidelines." Silence enveloped them, thick yet filled with the potential of new understanding. Jack clung to the moment, cherishing the stillness that accompanied his resolve. Yet despite the clarity he felt within himself, further doubts lurked behind the initial acceptance. Laura's gaze softened as she regarded him, her thoughts visibly shifting. "Time will tell," she said finally, breaking the silence. "But if you really want to be involved, it won't just be about showing up. It's about being committed, day in and day out." He nodded, absorbing the weight of her words. The road ahead would not be easy. Intentions had to evolve into actions, but something within him ignited, a flicker of self-awareness that he hadn't felt before. Despite the fear, hope intertwined with his renewed purpose. "What if we start slowly?" he suggested, every ounce of conviction behind his words. "How about I come by this weekend, just to be there, no expectations?" Laura hesitated, then nodded slowly, processing the proposition. The crack of possibility widened ever so slightly. But then a shift in her gaze flickered. Concern marred her features, and Jack caught the tension radiating from her. "You need to understand something crucial about parenting, Jack. It's not enough to want it. You have to prove it." The finality of her words hung in the air like a warning bell, and the enormity of the challenge loomed before him. Jack felt the weight of her expectation pressing against him, merging with his ambition to become a father. With steely resolve, he met her gaze. "Then I'll prove it." As they exchanged a silent understanding, he realized he was standing at the precipice of transformation. But even as he made that promise, shadows of doubt flitted at the edges of his mind. Was he equipped to navigate this new reality? Stepping into fatherhood meant more than taking action. It would demand raw introspection and vulnerability he had studiously avoided. As he left the cafe, Jack took one last look back at Laura, their connection tethering him to this journey. The next steps felt like climbing a steep mountain, each foothold necessary for the ascent he longed to achieve. the question lingered in his heart. Would he rise to the occasion, or would his past once again shackle him to an identity he fought to escape? The echoes of their conversation resonated, amplifying his need for clarity and commitment in the weeks ahead, igniting a fierce yearning for transformation. The personal journey he had initiated had only just begun, leading him toward a confrontation with truths he had buried all too deeply. What would he unearth in his quest to become the father he dreamt of being? And could he maintain his newfound resolve, or would old habits resurface to jeopardize this fragile foundation? The weekend crept closer with an agonizing slowness, each passing day filled with mounting anticipation that tangled with anxiety in Jack's chest. He now found himself at the threshold of possibility, a precarious edge of reconciliation and commitment. Mornings stretched into afternoons, and Jack's mind raced as he prepared for the visit. He wrestled with a swelling desire to be the father he envisioned, but unease clawed at the edges of his resolve. Jack spent Friday evening rifling through toys and books at a local store, trying to select something that would bridge the years of absence he had inflicted. He turned a small dinosaur over in his hands, its bright colors gleaming beneath the fluorescent lights. The simplicity of the toy stirred a chaotic mix of emotions within him. He questioned if Luke would even appreciate it, if it would signify anything meaningful after so much time apart. Fear coiled tight. It whispered doubts of failure, of not being good enough to step into the role he craved. That night, Jack stepped outside, breathing in the cool air as if it could clear the disarray in his head. The stars blinked high above, and he found himself staring at their luminescent dance, reflecting on the gravity of his intentions. What if it doesn't work, he wondered, his thoughts spiraling towards the worst-case scenarios. Would showing up, even for a moment, only open old wounds for Laura? Would Luke see a stranger in his father instead of the guide he sought? Despite the turmoil, something new began to anchor him, a nascent determination rooted in his desire to succeed for them, his son and Laura. Jack spent the hours before falling asleep drafting a mental blueprint of what being present would mean. It was not just about being there physically. It entailed listening, engaging, and fundamentally, being open to vulnerability. A small piece of himself questioned whether he could genuinely abandon the diplomacy of self-protection and embrace the risks of being raw and real. Saturday morning dawned bright and crisp, the sun spilling warmth into every corner of Jack's apartment, illuminating his reflections. The toy sat beside him, a token of his intentions. As he dressed, he considered what failures in the past had taught him, that change requires more than desire. It demands action, introspection, and an attentiveness to the needs of others that he often neglected in his own life. Arriving at Laura's place was like stepping onto a stage, the world sharpening into focus around him. He stood outside the door, quelling the butterflies churning in his stomach. Jack knocked, and when she opened the door, the wariness in her eyes held him captive. He recalled the weight of her words from their last meeting, the expectations carved from scars. "Hi, Jack," she said, her voice steady, but the warmth of greeting fraying. She stepped aside to let him in, tension palpable in the air as he crossed the threshold into uncharted territory. "Hi," he managed, his hands nervously clutching the toy bag. Laura motioned toward the living room, where a small table sat cluttered with crayons and colorful sheets of paper, evidence of Luke's afternoon activities. Anxiety tightened Jack's throat. Luke's laughter from somewhere deeper inside the apartment echoed, a glorious sound that pulled him forward. Laura led him to the living room, and Jack's breath caught in his throat as he took in the scene. Luke was sprawled across a rug, deeply immersed in drawing, oblivious to the world around him. A fleeting moment of doubt hit Jack. What is it like to be a part of this? But as their eyes met, Jack saw something else, a flicker of recognition and curiosity. "Hey, little dude," he called, testing the waters, reaching out for connection. Luke looked up, a mix of curiosity and confusion etched across his small features. Jack felt the weight of his own identity pressing heavily against him, its complexity amplifying as he faced this unexpected new reality. "Who are you?" Luke asked, his head tilting to the side, entirely unfiltered. Jack's heart stuttered. Simplicity and honesty cascaded through the innocence of the moment. He smiled, forcing his growing anxiety into a facade of calm. "I'm your dad. I'm here to hang out with you." Could the little boy accept him? The ruthless self-doubt grazed at the edges of his consciousness, but he steeled himself. Jack chose to lean into the uncertainty, aware that stepping forward meant becoming the father Luke needed, no matter how daunting. As they settled into conversation, Jack felt fragments of hope stitching into his heart amid the soft laughter. He envisioned growth, and not just for Luke, but for himself as well. Conversation surged between them, but the underlying fear loomed once again. Would it be enough? Jack could only hope that this first step was a precursor to a long journey ahead. Unbeknownst to him, Laura observed silently, weighing every interaction. Jack could sense her scrutiny, the caution in her demeanor. The day stretched ahead of them, filled with potential, yet the questions remained. How much could he repair? And at what cost would his journey unfold? What lay ahead would challenge the path he had committed to, a path that had just begun to reveal itself. Would he find the courage to embrace every challenge, confront his past, and evolve into the father they both deserved? Jack marveled at how easily Luke slipped into conversation, a child's natural curiosity paving the way for connection. The boy's laughter unraveled the tension that had theoretically gripped Jack's heart moments before. Yet as they transitioned from innocent exchanges to shared laughter over colorful drawings, a weight pressed down upon Jack's chest. He felt tethered to an uncertain past, unsure of how to be the father Luke deserved. "Can we draw together?" Luke asked, bright eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. The invitation cut through Jack's trepidation, and he nodded, motioning for Luke to sit close. He felt his pulse quickened, caught in the magnetic pull of the moment. As they began to draw, Jack sensed the need to engage beyond the surface, to consciously mold their budding relationship with intention. "Do you like dinosaurs?" Jack asked, holding the toy aloft as if it were a magic wand.
Luke's face lit up, and soon they were lost in a cacophony of chattering about which dinosaurs were the coolest, Luke's fascination infectious. For the first time, Jack noticed something stirring within him, an instinct to protect and nurture. But the nagging doubt festered beneath the surface. Could he provide stability, a consistent presence after years of absence? His confidence wavered under the burden of responsibility, pressing on him like an anchor tethered to despair. "Can you draw me a dinosaur?" Luke asked, pulling Jack back from the spiraling thoughts. The request sent a surge of determination through him. It was a simple ask, a child's innocent desire, and yet it felt monumental. He would not falter. He would stand tall in this moment. "I can try," Jack replied, feeling a thrill of vulnerability course through him. As he sketched a clumsy dinosaur, watching Luke's fervor in response, he felt a shift. This was tangible growth. They shared bright smiles, and in those fleeting moments, something within Jack began to mend. But Laura's gaze bore heavily on him, her watchful eyes rooted in skepticism. He could sense her judgment swirling amongst her thoughts, potentially barbed and demanding. His heart raced, not just from Luke's infectious energy, but from the looming specter of their past. He had loved Laura once, and the wounds from that love stung fresh beneath the surface. "Where have you been all this time?" Luke asked innocently, the question striking Jack like a bolt of lightning. Silence enveloped the room, charged and electric. Jack could feel Laura's breath hitch, her eyes darting between him and their son. The question weighed heavily, forcing Jack to confront his choices. The prolonged silence felt oppressive. How could he articulate the turmoil of years lost? How could he share the struggle for redemption without unraveling the fragile trust they were slowly building? "Well," he began, a shaky breath poised for release, "I've been trying to get better, trying to understand how to be here now. It's important to me that I do this right." The sincerity felt raw and laid bare. Luke's innocent gaze held no judgment, only curiosity, and Jack drew strength from that. It propelled him to face Laura, whose expressions were an intricate tapestry of fear, hope, and doubt. Would the truth he was slowly articulating resonate with her? Would she believe in his potential? Just then, Laura broke the silence with a deliberate question directed at Jack. "What do you envision for your relationship with him?" It was a challenge wrapped in hope, a mirror reflecting Jack's uncertainty. In that moment, it crystallized for Jack. He needed to create a narrative that was forward-looking, built upon accountability and earnestness. The realization cut through the earlier fog of self-doubt. I see myself being more than just a visitor in Luke's life. I want to commit to being a dad, guiding him, not repeating the same mistakes.
Laura absorbed his words, her expression softening momentarily before shielding herself behind the walls built from years of disappointment. Jack recognized an opportunity, a sliver of trust waiting for him to seize. As the afternoon deepened, a powerful truth brewed in Jack's chest. He understood that his own journey was entwined with the lives of Luke and Laura. His intent was genuine, his path defined not just by past failures, but by the commitment to forge a different narrative, a narrative rooted in presence, communication, and nurturing. Just as their laughter bubbled and the conversation began to flow more easily, the doorbell rang, jolting them from their cocoon. Tension surged back into the air, drawing Jack's attention as an unfamiliar weight settled over him. Who was at the door? As he shared a hesitant glance with Laura, Jack felt the moment ride a razor's edge. The confrontation that could transpire loomed larger than any of the fears he had faced today. With the weight of possibility pressing down on him, Jack steeled himself, ready to face whatever or whoever awaited on the other side. Jack's heart raced as the doorbell's echo filled the room, slicing through the fragile atmosphere they had just built. He felt the anticipation humming in the silence, as if the walls were holding their breath along with him. With his pulse pounding in his ears, he exchanged a glance with Laura, her eyes a mixture of apprehension and guarded curiosity. The weight of the moment pressed heavy upon him. He was acutely aware of how pivotal this encounter could be, not just for him, but for Luke and Laura. He hesitated, grappling with the swirling thoughts in his mind. Could this visitor be a chance to prove to Laura that he was serious about changing? Or would it serve as a reminder of his past mistakes, potentially unraveling everything he'd begun to stitch together? Taking a deep breath, Jack steeled himself and moved tentatively toward the door. As he opened it, the sight before him made his stomach drop. At the threshold stood his estranged mother, a woman whose absence had carved a chasm in his childhood and fueled many of his demons. The years had not softened her countenance, rather they had emboldened the resolve in her sharp gaze. "Jack," she said, her voice a measured calm that did little to mask the weight of her own history. "We need to talk." He tensed, a gut instinct urging him to retreat. 100 words flitted through his mind, each fighting for a place in the conversation. Anger, regret, even longing. But as the air thickened, he felt the eyes of Laura and Luke burning into his back, their fascination and apprehension a mirror to his own turmoil. "Now?" he replied, voice barely above a whisper. "Here?" She stepped over the threshold, her presence an unwelcome ghost crashing into the fragile reality he had shared with Laura and Luke. "Yes, now. It isn't safe to ignore this any longer." Jack's protective instincts kicked in, breathing life into an internal struggle as he wrestled with his desire for privacy against her urgent need to confront the past. The stakes had shifted in an instant. "You don't get to come back after all this time and demand things from me," he snapped, the frustration spilling forth. "Jack, listen," she implored, her tone now pleading. "I know I've made mistakes, but I'm not here to blame you for mine. I need you to understand what's truly at stake." The weight of her words reverberated in his chest. Jack could feel the ground shifting beneath him each time she breathed, a long buried complexity unraveling in the air they shared. As he glanced back at Laura and Luke, their silence became a constant echo in his thoughts. What would they hear in his mother's revelations? "Let's talk outside," he finally said, edging the door wider as he stepped into the porch, leaving Laura and Luke hovering on the edge of his world. The moment felt surreal as he squared off against the woman who had shaped his very sense of self, each of them wounded, but standing on opposite ends of a shared history that haunted them both. The shadow of the past clung to the air, heavy and oppressive. Jack was acutely aware of the responsibilities beckoning from behind him. Luke's laughter, Laura's cautious hope. The future he yearned for rested precariously on this precipice of confrontation. "Why now?" Jack asked, voice steady yet probing. "What makes this conversation so urgent?" His mother's eyes flickered with emotion, and he caught a glimpse of the hesitation that had probably governed her choices all these years. "Because, Jack, you have a son," she finally admitted, each word pounding with gravity. "And it's time you knew what really happened before it's too late." The impact of her confession crashed over him, displacing his breath. He struggled to comprehend the magnitude of her revelation, the universe of decisions and emotions swirling around the simple truth of being a father. As the silence stretched, the door behind him creaked slightly, a reminder of the new life he was forging. Jack's heart raced with uncertainty. The moment of truth had slipped away from him, leaving behind only a shadow of clarity that beckoned him forward. Would this revelation solidify his determination or fracture fragile ties that had begun to bind him to Laura and Luke? Tension coursed through him as he faced the first glimmers of understanding about himself, the possibility of history repeating itself, and a question burned in his chest. Would he rise to this challenge, or would he turn away once more? The door behind him stood ajar, a threshold not only to Laura and Luke, but also to the uncertain legacy of his family. And as he prepared to tackle the weight of his mother's confession, Jack realized that the moment had come to face the demons of his past for a chance to build a new future. Jack stood rooted on the porch, jaws clenched as he absorbed his mother's bombshell revelation. The pounding of his heart echoed in his ears, drowning out the evening sounds of crickets. He fought against the whirlwind of emotions threatening to engulf him: anger, disbelief, frustration. A son. The very word felt foreign on his tongue, yet it resonated in his core with an unsettling weight. His mother's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, a countenance he had long since learned to shut out. "Jack, please, I know this is overwhelming, but you deserve to know." Each syllable trembled with years of unsaid words, the pain of her choices etched into her features. He took a step back, as if to summon the distance between them, but he couldn't ignore how steeped in complexity their relationship was. "You left us, all of us, and now you want to pop back into my life because I have a child?" The bitterness spilled out, a reflex he couldn't contain. Jack saw the flinch in her posture, and for a moment he thought he might regret the words. "I wasn't ready, Jack. I thought leaving was the right choice," she replied, her voice cracking under the weight of admission. "Right choice?" he scoffed, the incredulity leaking through every word. "You didn't give me a chance to choose anything." The floodgates opened in his mind, memories of barren birthdays, unanswered questions, and the gnawing sense of unworthiness that accompanied his youth. His mother shifted under his glare, clearly battling her own storms. "I came back because I realized that you have a son, our grandson, and he deserves to know the truth about his family, about why things happened the way they did." For a split second, the thought of a boy, a piece of him, rooted somewhere in the world, turned his insides. He felt a flicker of fierce protectiveness, a primal instinct igniting deep within him. But coupled with that urgency was a sickening dread. What truth? You can't just drop this on me and expect me to prepare for a son I never knew existed. "Because I was afraid, Jack," she insisted, stepping closer into the fragment of space they shared. The sincerity in her voice shook him. "Growing up without your father, my choices made you who you are. It's all my fault. But it doesn't have to stay that way." The weight of her admission hung like a thick fog. My mind raced. A son meant legacy, confrontation, and unspoken truths that would eventually demand to be heard. Yet, the fear of another cycle of abandonment loomed like a specter dressed in their past failures. "Tell me about him, my son," Jack demanded, his tone now sharp with purpose as he turned his thoughts from despair to urgency. He felt a shifting realization he hadn't expected. The flicker of determination ignited a possibility of change. Perhaps confronting this truth could lay the foundation for something new, something he could actually nurture. His mother took a deep breath, standing straighter, perhaps buoyed by his newfound resolve.
"His name is Oliver. He's 3 years old, and he thinks about you constantly. He knows you're out there." Jack's heart splintered at the thought. 3 years. He had been absent in a way that felt irreparable, yet there remained a flicker of hope that something could be salvaged. "What happened to you? Why didn't you come back all those years?" "I was terrified of reliving my mistakes," she said softly, every word crafted with gravity.
But now I realize I can't let my fears dictate your life or your son's. The fire inside Jack transformed into a tempest of clarity. He understood now that this wasn't merely about the child or his mother, but about him stepping into a role he'd never expected to fill. He could rewrite this narrative, redefine everything. He owed it to Laura, to Luke, to himself. "Show me everything," he insisted, stepping further toward her. "Show me my son." Their exchange crackled with the energy of buried truths and the chance at redemption. Each syllable offered an opening, a pathway leading to profound transformation. As that realization washed over him, a new question emerged in the depths of his heart. It burned within him, a truth he sought to interrogate. Could he embrace this challenge, shift the course of his life, and become the father he had never had? The night air felt charged with anticipation, as if the universe itself waited for his choice. Jack inhaled deeply, aware that he was standing at a crossroads, one carved from pain and fraught with promises. "Jack," his mother began, her voice an uncertain whisper. "There's something else you need to understand." He braced himself as they stepped into the unknown together, aware that what lay ahead could redefine everything he thought he knew about himself, about love, and about the family he could yet build. Jack's thoughts churned as he shifted from the porch into the dim light of the living room, the remnants of dusk still clinging to the edges of the window. The surreal revelation reverberated inside him. A son, Oliver, someone entirely new whom he could potentially shape with his own guiding hand. The prospect both thrilled and terrified him. "What else do I need to understand?" He pushed forward, the urgency in his tone disallowing his mother any opportunity to look away. He took a steadying breath, realizing that each moment he spent in the presence of the woman who had withheld so much from him felt critically important. There existed a truth that could alter everything. His mother hesitated, the wavering revolution evident in her features, but then she spoke again, her voice firmer. "I had a choice to make the day I left. I could stay and try to make it work, or I could walk away for your sake. In my mind, it was a sacrifice, but in truth, it was a coward's exit."
Jack's anger flared at the notion of her self-justification, but there was a quiet revelation hiding beneath, perhaps the reason behind his own battles, the struggles to keep moving forward when life threw curveballs. "You think that's what I needed? A runaway mother?" He spat, but his tone softened, becoming almost plaintive. "You might have escaped, but you left a gaping hole behind." "I know," she whispered, a stream of guilt flowing through her words. "But this is why I've come back now. I've spent years realizing how much I lost and how much you deserve to reclaim." The familiarity of pain now echoed in Jack's heart, yet he felt an unlikely thread of connection with his mother, a shared bond forged from shared regrets. Despite the hurt, he couldn't dismiss the idea of self-redemption for both of them. "What if I want to build something different with my son?" he asked, the question ignited by a spark of hope. "What can I learn from you about being a father?" His mother's eyes filled, and she reached out, taking his hand, her grip firm yet trembling. "Admitting I was wrong was the hardest step, but it's the beginning of my redemption. You don't have to repeat my history, Jack. You can be better." The weight of her expectations brimmed on his shoulders as he processed her words. There was a tender moment of acknowledgement, each battling their own demons while standing on this precipice of mutual growth. He envisioned the cascading walls of his past, and within that chaotic imagery, a tiny flicker fought for life, his son. "Okay," he said slowly, determination rising. "If I'm going to do this, then I need to know everything about Oliver. His likes, his dislikes, all of it. I want to be there for him." "Then let's start connecting, one step at a time," she suggested, each syllable punctuated by a new resolve. "I can help share stories, photographs, everything you need." Jack felt himself shift. A sense of agency blossomed within him. He had the opportunity to redefine his legacy. Through that slight shift in understanding, he began building a vision for his family, one dawn after another. They spent hours navigating through memories, the photographs painting a picture of Oliver's playful spirit, each frame connecting threads that felt frayed and stitched back together. As he left that night, Jack walked with purpose, every step echoing against the pavement underfoot.
He felt a burning desire to meet Oliver, not as an estranged father, but as a man determined to face his fears and embrace the responsibility that now lay at his feet. He envisioned the small boy's laughter and the warmth of his tiny hand in his. That grind of determination ignited yet another realization. The ghosts of his childhood did not have to dictate this new chapter. He could forge a different path, one wrapped in the promise of love and connection. But with each step came the subtle anxiety of the unknown. The question loomed large and uninvited. Would Oliver welcome him?
Would he have the courage to face this new role without mirroring the past? As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, Jack knew that the answers he'd seek were out there, waiting just around the corner, cloaked in uncertainty. Time to face what really matters, he muttered under his breath, surrendering to the quiet challenges his heart would contend with soon. And as he stepped into the night, a single thought consumed him. Could he genuinely learn to love as a father should? Jack Thompson found himself standing on the precipice of change, a profound evolution fueled by clarity and a yearning for connection. The journey to uncover who he truly could be as a father was daunting, yet an undeniable fire surged within him. Surrounded by the glow of the New York evening sky, the weight of his choices pressed against him with urgency and promise. After wrestling with his mother's revelations, Jack couldn't help but feel the threads of his past intertwining with the present future he desired. He envisioned Oliver, a child whose existence sparked hope, and the reality that he had the power to shape and guide this young boy began to settle into the corners of his heart. Arising early the next morning, Jack turned on the news in the kitchen while preparing a simple breakfast. The anchors discussed rising figures in the corporate world and lessons of personal fulfillment, but their words faded into background noise as he mentally crafted a plan. Today was more than a day of simply being present. It was a step towards rebuilding an identity he had long carried in silence. Seated at the kitchen table, he opened his notebook, the pages reflecting his ambitions. Each entry, neatly scripted, was a testament to the resolve that stirred within him. He began with one overriding principle: be there for Oliver. There it was, his guiding mantra that would define his actions not only today, but in every moment to come. Jack glanced at the clock. Time to meet Laura. The drive to her apartment was filled with a mix of excitement and apprehension, the familiar cityscape now taking on a new sheen as he navigated towards his son and what it could mean to actively participate in his life. When he finally parked, he took a moment to breathe deeply, settling his nerves as he reflected on the importance of this moment. As he entered the apartment, the air vibrated with possibility. Laura was there with Oliver, the little boy coloring at the table, his face illuminated with innocent joy. Jack felt heat rushing through him, his nerves sparking with every heartbeat. "Hey," he greeted, kneeling to Oliver's level, willing the child to see him as more than the stranger he had once been. "Who are you again?" came the innocent inquiry, laced with straightforward curiosity. "I'm your dad," Jack replied, determination laced within those two simple words. Oliver looked up, tilting his little head in a manner so similar to his own, and for the first time Jack felt the pulsating hope of connection ebb and flow. "Can we color together?" "Absolutely," Jack said, the invitation anchoring him. As they sat together, laughter bubbling between them over shared colors and imaginative creations, a profound realization washed over Jack. Here was growth, tangible and exhilarating. In those moments, laughter transformed uncertainty into action, and missed opportunities began to dissipate. He could feel the invisible walls of his past cracking, stitch by stitch. It was exhilarating. As hours passed, time melted into an easy rhythm, one defined by joy and small victories. Jack became playful, guiding Oliver, not just through colors, but through life's nuances that deserved unveiling. They discussed dinosaurs, superheroes, and dreams, simple conversations that solidified Jack's presence, pushing aside the shadows of his estranged past. But the course of the day demanded more than playful banter. There danced an undercurrent of genuine emotional investment that cultivated a fragile bond. As they retreated into simpler moments filled with laughter, Laura observed quietly, her expression shifting from skepticism to cautiously welcoming hope. That connection expanded, brought forth in moments where vulnerability met earnestness. "Jack," Laura finally spoke, her tones shifting the conversation from playful tones to something significant. "How do you feel about being part of Oliver's life moving forward?" The heart of the question ignited in Jack a previously buried awareness.
being a father meant stepping up, dedicating oneself to this fragile life. "I want to be here," he asserted earnestly, locking eyes with her. "I'll show up for him. Not just today, but every day. I'll prove that this time will be different." Laura's eyes, once filled with weariness, shimmered with bottled-up hope. "It won't always be easy, Jack, but I believe in second chances. If you're willing to embrace this, Oliver will see you for who you truly are." That was the pivotal moment, a merging of intentions, a commitment knitted tighter than before. Jack was ready to shed past inadequacies and embrace the future, to nurture not just Oliver, but himself in the process. The warmth of acceptance enveloped him, reinforcing what he envisioned, a family reborn from the ashes of neglect and regret. As the golden hour enveloped them, Jack made the quiet promise to work diligently and genuinely, a foundation upon which intimacy could be built. The distance between his past self and the present was stark, and as he spent more moments immersed in Oliver, he knew the journey toward transformation had just begun. Leaving that day, Jack felt a resoluteness settle within him, strength that resonated clearly in the ambitions he had envisioned for himself.
No longer was he merely a figurehead in the corporate world. He was a father, stepping into a new sense of identity, armed with purpose. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, Jack realized the journey he had embarked upon was not just about reclaiming lost time, but about forging a new legacy, one built with love, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to those he held dear. This was just the start of something remarkable. The moment had come for Jack to redefine what it meant to be present, not simply as a title, but as a father who would honor the possibilities that lay ahead. And with that acknowledgement, he stepped into a new chapter, feeling not just ready, but deserving of the joy he sought to cultivate. Now, dear friends and dedicated viewers, this is your moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and join us in amplifying these breakthroughs. Comment your reactions and theories about how Jack's journey resonates with you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion and encourage their transformation too. You need to subscribe now. It's time to be part of something life-changing. Don't wait even one more second to share this journey of personal overcoming.